Fidel, and we have got Nwaji with us as well. And we're going to be discussing all things on national news related right here on Freshly Pressed. Good morning, Fidel. Good morning, Nwaji. How you doing?
Good morning, Shokwe. Good morning, Nwaji, and good morning, Lagos.
All right, Nwaji, can we hear from you?
Yes, you may. Good morning, Sope. How are you? What's happening, Fidel? And good morning, Lagos.
There we go. Great to have all of us. And we are streaming live up on youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. Make sure you go over there, check out the live stream, and leave your comments up on there so that we can read out your contributions to the conversation. You can also send WhatsApp messages into 0809 444 981. Hello, YouTube. Great to have you with us. All right, so let's get straight into the stories because there are quite a number of stories. And today being April 1st, let's take a look at what is probably going to be the most pertinent, biggest story for the day in Lagos. Comes in from this day newspaper. Lagos CP warns against planned Lekki toll gate protests. Now, this is in a statement that was made available late last night by the State Police Public Relations Officer, Benjamin Hunde. The State Commissioner of Police, Abiodun Alabi, said, and I quote, "While the command is not averse to the people's right to freedom of assembly and association and expression, the command will equally live up to its mandate of ensuring that no person or group of persons is allowed to infringe on the fundamental human rights of others, especially the rights to freedom of movement and rights and dignity of and the rights to dignity of human persons." Now, according to the planned to the protesters who are planning to protest this reopening of the bridge, the reopening was a slap to the faces of those who have lost their lives, during the EndSARS protest in October 2020. Now, Nwaji, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Well, it's a very complicated matter at this particular point, Sope. I think primarily because a lot of people are still advocating for justice for the individuals that lost their lives during the October 20th, 2020 massacre. And they feel that reopening that toll gate is in disrespect and in dishonor to those individuals, especially when judgment has not been reached in a pending investigation, a pending panel and everything else. So I fully understand the premise behind the emotions surrounding why people want to protest and not allow the reopening of the toll gate, because it's symbolic. It is symbolic in the sense of what it represented, why people were protesting to begin with, which we cannot forget was about EndSARS, not necessarily the toll gate itself. And the toll gate was just a physical representation and manifestation of the state at that particular time. But in the same vein and in the same breath, we have to be able to get to a point where we move forward. We have to get to a point where we understand that the toll gate is also a source of revenue for Lagos State. It's interesting enough because we are going to talk about IGR in one of the other articles as well. And we have to understand that commerce must continue and move. So the question is, how do we now combine both, Sope? How do we ensure that, the state continues to operate and generate revenue so that the, sources of the revenue from the toll gate can go towards infrastructure along the Lekki-Ikoyi axis, which has been proven to be the case, where services can continue. But at the same time, we continue to honor people that lost their lives in a very horrific manner, that justice is served, that judgments are reached. So I think the conversation is, how do we now bring individuals to the table to discuss the best ways to move forward? How can both situations...
If I can just weigh into what Jay was saying, I also feel like we should appreciate that people who have been using that road have seen that since tolling stopped within that axis, traffic has tremendously reduced. Okay, there's been an easy flow of traffic. And while representatives of the LCC have assured that, they have new technology to make passage seamless, people cannot just fathom why this bottleneck has been there all this while, and they've been, taking it, and now it's coming back. So I think the important thing is for government, and not just the CP now, not just the police, because the CP sounds like an arm of enforcement, but for the executives and the government of Lagos State to continuously make people understand or be assured, like Waje has said, commerce must go on, But the executive arm of Lagos State must continuously make people ensure why they need to toll this place. They need to give proper proof. Until then,
because I think
the confidence isn't there.
What people with long memories will remember is the state of that area before the tolls were introduced, before the maintenance, continuous maintenance went on, which then ensured free flow of traffic along that route. So there is that as well. All right. So Nwaji, did you have any last words on this?
Yeah, my apologies, network challenges. So yeah, I think you're right. I think the only point I was trying to make before I got cut off was that we need to get to a point of truth and reconciliation, Sope, where we can be able to ensure that people's memories and judgments are taken care of. And at the same time, we continue with the existence of the tolls because they do have a benefit. The revenues do go towards the building of the Lekki-Ikoyi Expressway, not just within this particular axis, but all the way down towards Ajah and everywhere else, and it's an important source of revenue for the state. So I do believe that it's important we understand the essence of the tolls, but at the same time, the government needs to be responsible in making sure that judgments are reached, so that people do not operate from a place of anger; they operate from a place of understanding.
All right, then let's take a look. And by the way, can I just say, Fidel, I completely understand where you're going with in terms of the free flow of traffic, because there was a market difference. Moving on now, Fidel, I'd love to get your take on this from the Punch newspaper on insecurity. Reps consider National Assembly shutdown over Buhari's inaction. Now, emotions ran high in the lower chamber yesterday as the House of Representatives cut short its plenary, this following an extended debate over the growing insecurity in the country. And items on the order paper for the day, which contains the agenda for each plenary, were stepped down after the lawmakers, mostly members of the All Progressives Congress, spent over an hour criticizing the Buhari-led regime and security agencies, with some lawmakers even calling for a shutdown of the chambers to force the president into action. Fidel, to see this even happening in the House of Representatives, what would you say to this?
I mean, it's what is fantastic is that the lawmakers who are speaking up are actually members of the APC. I mean, we usually see this.
Cannot stress that enough.
It's fascinating, to be honest. But I appreciate the fact that these gentlemen, these ladies and these gentlemen have woken up and can smell the coffee. However, I just hope this is not just one of those genuine cries that just end up being swept under the rug. Now, it's not just because these lawmakers want to complain, but they see this genuine need to be able to give some sort of accountability and let it not be that they're not working. However, I feel like, the story goes on to say that the lawmakers are calling that even the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Mongunu, should have, left with the previous service chiefs. If you ask me, with the state of things in Nigeria, I think it's more than just, the National Security Advisor. We've also had crisis with respect to energy, oil, petrol, diesel. Who is the National Assembly going to call to order when it comes to these things? Let's not forget that even part of the story says that the debates by the National Assembly are just becoming or are starting to become like paper tigers, because even when they summon appointees of the executive, they don't honor it. And when they pass resolutions, it's almost like it's not effective, right? So I think the National Assembly is beginning to see that both the people and then their executive is losing confidence in whatever it is they're doing or saying. And most times this kind of radicalism, if I may call it, usually comes from the lower house. I'd like to see it, extend. And yes, maybe if our lawmakers wake up, because we must understand that the lawmakers are the true representative of the people, right? Fine, we elect our executives and the chief security officer, but when it comes to the voice of the people ought to be the representative. That's why we have so many lawmakers across the representing the federation, you know, and that's why we have so many senatorial districts and whatnot. So the lawmakers beginning to say these kind of things, I hope the conversation continues.
All right, then. Okay, and Nwaji, I'm coming to you for this one because it's still in the vein of this story, and it actually now we hear from the House leader himself, and this in from the Premium Times on Insecuirty. Allow Nigerians to bear arms to defend themselves, says House leader. So the majority leader of the House of Representatives, Ado Doguwa of APC Kano, calling for firearm permits for Nigerians who are willing to defend themselves in the face of the failure of the security agencies to protect their lives and properties. And I'm going to give a direct quote from him now. He said, "If the agencies of security have failed, then Nigerians should not be seen as failures." Nwaji, your thoughts?
I mean, Shakwe, the fundamental role of government is to protect the lives and property of people. And that is what governments are elected to do in a democratic society. There's an old wonderful quote that says, "Protect my life and property and I give you my allegiance." And that is the essence of that in sense of what society is meant to do. And when you fail to protect the lives of your citizens and you fail to protect their property, then the citizens have no choice but to look after themselves. And that is what this particular member of the House of Representatives is alluding to with regards to Nigerians now carrying up arms, organizing themselves within militia, and getting to a point where they can begin to protect themselves. Now, I'm not a big fan of everyday Nigerians carrying arms, because I think that just creates further problems, especially when you have poverty and poverty mindset situations abound. I think what you just do with that is open up another can of worms and Pandora's box when it comes to, gang members and things of that nature. And then you have like local hood situations that will just take over. But the point that is being made is essentially the truth, which is, what do you expect citizens when the government is not demonstrating a capacity to protect people? It is an absolute damning statement on the governments to see the situations that we have seen just this week alone. I'm not going to go into any further details because the last 5 days have been indicative of the failure of government to protect Nigerians on a daily basis. What happened in Kaduna is absolutely shambolic. What happened in the Abuja Stadium is absolutely shambolic. And it's a statement of how bad things or how things have broken down to a point where government are no longer in control of security.
Niger, Benue, Ogun, the list could go on.
Like I said, I'm just focusing on this week. I'm not even going into what has happened over the past couple of months. And government need to be able to look at that and make a decision as to what are the issues that we have. Is it that we do not have the security apparatus to protect the country? If we don't, what do we now need to do? Do we now need to call in neighboring forces? Do we now need to call in a version of ECOMOG from other African states to come and assist if it gets that bad? After all, we used to do that. We were the peacekeeping force of West Africa in the 90s. And, this thing is just truly sad. When you think about what happened in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and the Nigerian army were the ones called in to secure those particular countries when they had absolutely collapsed, to think that we are now in a situation where we may need external help is absolutely damning on this particular government. And that's what this House of Representatives is speaking towards, that what do you expect the citizens to do when security has collapsed the way that it's collapsed?
All right, now we do need to take a break, but before we go on that break, let me read out some of your messages going over to youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. Akiyemi Olatunji, who says he's watching from Papua New Guinea, 9 hours ahead. Great to know that you're catching up on Nigerian news with Freshly Pressed. And this is, I can't see a name to this message, but it says, isn't it almost too late in the day for the outbursts that we're seeing now? Both the upper and lower houses have been rubber stamps to this regime instead of watchdogs. These terrorists seem to have already entrenched themselves. And on WhatsApp, we have this message in BDA from Lekki, who says, I can't believe the police is talking tough on the protests and protecting people's rights. With the state of insecurity in this country, the tough talk should be done in Kaduna State. Focus should be 100% now on stemming the insurgency that's cropping up in Nigeria and nothing else. There's really nothing wrong with resuming tolling, but it just feels like this government is minoring on the majors. And BDA goes on to say, by the way, has the president ever called the terrorists? Food for thought. And I see the messages coming in. We're going to take a very quick break. When we get back, I'll see how many more of your messages I can read. So keep them coming in up on YouTube and up on WhatsApp as well.
98.1. Win big in the First Bank Verve debit card transact and win promo. Transact with your first.
All right, YouTube, this is the point of the show where we get to go off air and just interact with you. So who is the person that's sending in these messages? I can't see your name. I just see a nice green avatar. So the person says, in various local governments, while the government acts like they have no control, which we all know is impossible for such things to happen. That's an interesting one. Okay. Well, someone from Shomolu. And we are back. Okay, here we go. Back to the messages up on WhatsApp 0809 440 981. Let's see what you have to say. Mary from Festac says, I feel the pain with regards to the reopening of the Lekki toll gate. It's not only about the money and free traffic. We know how our country is, that once the toll gates are open, there will be no justice for the massacre that happened in October 2020. Austin, let's see if I can read this message, says, these terrorists, bandits, and their sponsors are going somewhere with Nigeria, and they are determined, but we are pretending that we don't know their plan, says Austin from Satellites. Whilst Nero says, if the government fails to protect the citizens, then that is just you now calling for anarchy. If the citizens are in possession of arms, imagine what they will do with those arms. Whilst Joseph Menyi says, the Lagos state government and LCC are just not sincere about the tolling. A top official actually said that it's revenue from the plazas that are used to balance the tax bracket deficits. And yeah, thank you so much for sending that message in. All right, let's take a look at the next story. Coming up, it is from the Premium Times. Rescue Me app. Police received 10,122 fake alerts in 4 days. This according to Force spokesperson Muyiwa Adejobi, who stated this via his Twitter handle yesterday. Fidel, what does this speak to about the efficacy of the app and how exactly the information that the police get will then be able, how much of their time it will take to deal with this?
I mean, 10,000, that's a lot. That's a lot. But I first of all, I would just have to ask that we Nigerians, sometimes we need to be part of the solution. Yes, we are very good at pointing out the troubles or the problems, but we also need to be part of the solution. Please, if you do not need police assistance, if you don't have an emergency, there's really no need calling a direct line to the police or the Rescue Me or using the Rescue Me app. However, I like how the police are seemingly starting to use technology to solve problems. However, I would also have expected to hear things like the number of incidents that have been reported that they actually were able to attend to. I've gone down the story and I can't see that. And I would also like to hear about response time, because
that's an interesting factor.
Response time, because let's be honest, it's a bit abstract or remote for those who have been in a crisis and needed the assistance of maybe police or any other agency, and then they can't get it. And I still struggle to see how the same policemen we see on the expressway, who can be very mischievous and intimidating and are potential extortionists, I still struggle to see how, because I mean, don't get me wrong, I know there are good policemen out there, I know there are good policemen who are doing their job out there, but there is still a lot of bad eggs. I struggle to see how these are the same guys who are, you know, making a difference with this technology. So maybe the police rep should also put out a number of incidents reported that they were able to handle, incidents that maybe they had to maybe transfer, or how well, or maybe as per geography, where there were more calls, because that's how you solve crime. You know, look at the areas of high density, and then look at areas where you know, there's need for improvement. I'd like to see that as well.
All right then. Punch news now. Cash-strapped states groan and widen tax nets and begin aggressive revenue generation. Now, Nwaji, I know that you alluded to this in your discussion of one of the earlier stories. Now, the low revenue accruing to state governments monthly from the Federation Account Allocation Committee is forcing them to have to, you know, renew their calls for the removal of fuel subsidy and actually figure out strategies to increase their IGR. Nwaji, I'd love to get your take on this. Are they being forced to do what they should be doing at this point?
The fact that they have to be forced to do this is also part of the problem, Shokben, because why are you a state? And I think part of the issue is that a lot of states in Nigeria have no business being states. The last time I checked, it's between 6 and 8 states that are actually economically viable, in the sense of they're actually generating revenue that where they can cover their expenses. All the other states just depend on government allocations or loans to carry on. So why you're a state? Why advocate for you to be a state? Why be a governor of a state? Why have the state apparatus in place if you're not going to have an IGR system in place? That is the whole entire essence. And then if your state cannot generate revenue for whatever reason, then you have no business being a state. You need to be absorbed into another region that can actually generate revenue so you can look after itself. We are a federation. And until we begin to have this attitude of not giving handouts to states, then we're just going to continue to have this problem. So I am a big, gigantic believer in what they're doing so that the states can become more self-sufficient, because that's the only way we get ourselves out of this. States need to get creative. They need to look at the industries within their states. They need to look at the services within their states. They need to look at the resources within their states and figure out how they can create systems that give them revenue from either tax or from investments or anything of that nature. That is what you are meant to do as a governor. It's not for you just to put on traditional, put it over your shoulders and put on a cap and call yourself a governor. No, it requires work, because without it, you can't now begin to advocate for security. Without it, you can't now not begin to advocate for healthcare, education within your state. You need income to be able to make those things happen. You cannot depend on the center to be able to run your state, because when you do that, the center now has control. So I support it 100%. I've been saying this for years. You need to get economically viable as a state. You need to generate revenue, because without it, you're just wasting your time.
Now, Nwaji, for those states that are not thinking right now of how to generate or increase their IGR, we're seeing states such as Benue saying that it is having to borrow to pay salaries. What would you say about the future of those sorts of states?
Well, I would say that people need to elect leaders in those states that actually have a plan for IGR. So with the upcoming general elections, these are the things that people within those states need to take a close look at. So you need to look at the track record of the candidates, look at the track records of the incumbent, and begin to ask yourself serious questions around, do we have the right leaders that want to focus on things that are important to us, such as IGR? So my call will be for the citizens of those states to elect leaders that are serious about internally generated revenue.
Now, we've got just a few minutes left, but we've got a couple of stories that I'd love for us to touch on. First off, from the Guardian newspaper, Nwaji, I'll stick with you for this one. Telcos issue 7-day warning, plan discriminatory pricing in hostile states. And we've been hearing from the Association of Licensed Telecoms Operators of Nigeria, further from here on out known as Alton, saying that it's this time the news saying that its members are no longer going to tolerate discriminatory charges from certain states that are requesting non-statutory levies and taxes. So let me get your take on that.
It's the cost of doing business, Shokbe. That's it. It's literally the cost of doing business. If states are going to be, if telecommunication companies in certain states are going to have challenges with infrastructure, are going to have challenges with security, are going to have challenges with certain charges that are being levied upon them, then unfortunately the customers in those states are going to have to bear the brunt. If they're going to be service disruptions because of whatever reason the states are not providing friendly, cooperative services, then what do you expect the telecommunication companies to do? Is either they pull out or they now transfer those high levied costs into the customers. It is the cost of doing business. And until we begin to understand these things, nobody can have disparaging comments around what they want businesses to do. Some of these states, Sope, are very, very unfriendly. They're very, very unfriendly to do business in. And what's not going to happen is that the telecommunication companies are going to make a decision and say, you know what, it doesn't make sense. We're not getting the revenues we want. We're either going to pull out, which means there's going to be disrupted services in those states and the bordering states, or we're going to now make sure we transfer those costs so that we can recoup on these expenses that are being levied towards us.
All right, and very quickly, Fidel, I'd love to get your take on this. From the Punch newspaper, we have this headline: Abuja pitch invasion, security personnel unprepared to handle crowd, say experts. Now, this is something that we saw happening over the, pardon me, something that we saw happening in which there was a life lost. Your take, please.
I first of all, I really just want to condemn the activities that happened there. I mean, I don't think it's something that we can be proud of, especially because I need to understand. I think FIFA might just be giving us sanctions or and as well as CAF. However, I think it's a butterfly effect. I think it's a butterfly effect of, you know, things happening in Nigeria as a whole. So the anger, the vandalism, the vandalization, and every other thing thereof is just a reflection of how our people feel. People are upset, people are frustrated, and then what happened at the stadium was just a reflection of all that. However, I to be honest with you, I think maybe us not qualifying allows us to look inwards and look at ourselves and say, okay, there's a genuine rot, and maybe, I mean, most of the time we always have this distraction that comes whenever things are going wrong in the country. Maybe we, at this point in time, we don't need a distraction, being the World Cup qualification. Maybe we don't need this distraction. Maybe we need to focus on things going on. However, I do appreciate that indeed there needs to be proper training. There needs to be better, you know, orientation for those who are working in stadiums, who are handling crowds. It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's something that can be done. So there are some lessons here, but it's bigger than that.
All right, I'm gonna need to end the show now because we have run out of time, and I see so many of your messages. We'll see. Thank you so much for sending them in. Apologies for not being able to get to as many of them as possible. Thank you so much to my panelists. Fidel, Nwaji, thank you so much. You can catch both of them on social media. You can catch Fidel at Izotanen, and you can catch Nwaji Jibono at the Corporate MC, corporate spelled with a K. Coming up, it is going to be Sports Inside the Locker Room. That is at 8:15. Thank you and goodbye.